What's going on? What's going on, everybody? We are live. The Lions have dropped their schedule. Man, there's so much to get into today. I'm gonna give everybody a minute. Go ahead, hit that like button if you're here with me tonight. Go ahead and jump in the chat. Detroit D, I already see you in the chat saying it's going to be a great season. I mean, that's how I'm feeling already. Like I said, I talked to you. We hung out a little bit yesterday. I was talking to Luke. I was already pretty excited about the season. We've known for a minute who the Lions would be playing, so it's not a matter of like looking at the schedule and trying to figure out their record from that. It's more so being able to understand, like, again, like, what's the breakdown going to be. Let's look at our home versus away split. Let's figure out where our bye is. Let's see how many primetime games we have. So it's going to be a real good night. I think I got to check out the Lions schedule release video. That was pretty creative, that was pretty funny. Um, but yeah, man, like, again, be sure to hit the like button if you are new here, be sure to subscribe, do all of those things. Like I said, like, let's just kinda, like, talk about the schedule. Um, I got it pulled up here, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull that up so we can kinda just see what the schedule is looking like. Uh and like I said, I'm not too surprised. I'm not really worried about anything from looking at the schedule. Nothing really concerns me. I think the Lions got a really good break uh based on where their bye week is. And then I've had to do like a little bit of extra research because the schedule that the Lions release doesn't say which games are prime time and which ones aren't, but I have a pretty good idea of which games are prime time. And the one thing that we talked about yesterday that I was pretty adamant about was I wanted the Lions to have, at least 4 primetime games this season. Um, Based on an article that I saw from Pride of Detroit, it sounds like the Lions actually have, 5 primetime games this year, which is, again, that's more than I was, hoping for. Obviously, there may be the possibility that something gets flexed, but, um, I don't think it's very likely. I think the NFL is gonna try and keep the schedule the way it is. Um, but yeah, I think they have 3 Thursday night games. Obviously, the home opener against Kansas City, week 4 against Green Bay, and then they also have Thanksgiving, which is week 12 against Green Bay as well. So a few Thursday night games, but then they also have a Monday night game against the Raiders, and then week 17 is technically a Saturday game, but it's also in prime time, and that's going to be on ESPN as well. So a lot of national attention is going to be on the Lions this year, and so it's going to be really good to kind of have the team get that notoriety, and hopefully, again, based on the way they play, they kind of live up to the hype that a lot of people already kind of have for them. So again, I'm really excited about that. Um, Looking at the schedule, so if I just look at the first 4 games, right? Let's look at the first 4 games. You have Kansas City week 1. You get the rematch against Seattle in week 2. You get Atlanta week 3, and then Green Bay away. So away at Kansas City, 2 home games in a row, and then you go out to Green Bay. Oh, what's good, Luke? So I got Luke out here in the chat. Appreciate you coming through. Um, but so yeah, looking at those first 4 games, it's not a bad split. It's not all that imposing to me. I think you have a really good chance. I think on the plus side, you have a chance of going 3-1, and I think on a worst case scenario, you're probably looking at going 2-2. Um, Obviously, that's barring injuries. That's we don't know how these other teams are going to be playing. Once the season kind of kicks off, but outside of like any type of doom or gloom type of situation, I think the Lions are in a real good place. Looking at just again the way the schedule kind of lays itself out. Um, I've already seen a couple people on Twitter. I've already got into it with somebody on Twitter about the Kansas City game. That seems to be the one that people are most concerned about, just because it's Kansas City, Super Bowl champs. You're there, prime time, and I think a lot of people are really concerned about the lights being too big for the Lions. But I mean, I think if we're honest and we're real about it, this is what you want. If you're a Lions fan and you're expecting this team to really be, contending for the NFC, to be able to make a push in the playoffs, you should want to take on the Chiefs early. And when Luke and I were talking yesterday, he kind of alluded to as much as well, like, "Hey, if you wanna play those teams, like, let's get those out early so that you can kind of get a feel for who you are." Um, and I think that's gonna be really good for the Lions is to be able to go up against Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid and really try to understand, like, again, people were talking last year about this team being a team that you didn't wanna see in the playoffs, and we know that Kansas City went out there, played against the Eagles, a really good Eagles team, and won the Super Bowl. So, for you to get first crack at them of the season, you have a chance to play spoiler because obviously it's their banner night. They're gonna get their rings. It's gonna be all eyes on them. But if you play spoiler, now all eyes are on you, and they're going to be on you for the rest of the season because you're going to be the team that took down the defending champs. Um, first game of the season. Shout out to Joel C in the chat. Saying shout out Miko with this new channel. Been needing some more quality Lions content. So tired of the clickbait Lions content. Yo, I appreciate that, Joel. I'm gonna do what I can, man. I don't believe in doing clickbait. I don't believe in creating content just for the sake of creating it. I want to be able to be honest and give my honest feedback of what I think about this team. So I really appreciate you coming through. Luke saying facts, playing the tougher games early is important. And I think you get that. You get a couple games where again, they should be quote unquote easy, right? I think Atlanta should be relatively easy. I think Carolina should be relatively easy. Um, I think Tampa will be relatively easy, and I think Oakland. So, like going into your first 8 games of the year, you have a very good chance of this Lions team having a winning record going into the bye. And I think that's the next thing I want to talk about is the bye. The Lions, I think, really got lucky here where you have a bye literally in the middle of your season. Um, which is great because again, you get to play 8 games, go into the bye, get healthy, rest up, do all of those things, and then finish out the other half of your season and hopefully be able to finish off at a high note, as well as correct anything that may need to be corrected. Um, for those of y'all in the chat, which game are you most concerned about when you look at the schedule? Whether it's the first half, the second half, what is the game that you kind of have circled that's like, this one could kind of spell trouble for the Lions. Again, when I kind of look at it, obviously, obviously the Chiefs kind of stand out, but for me, I think it's also the Chargers, and I think it's just because of the fact that you have to go out west. Justin Herbert is one of those up and coming quarterbacks where again he can do, he's great throwing the ball. He's also very mobile. Depending on how healthy their receiving core can be, Los Angeles kind of feels like one of those teams where again they could be in the mix in the AFC West. It's always going to be a battle between them and Kansas City out there. Shout out to Jacob Burnley. He says Seattle. I could see that too because again, Seattle had our number last year. Our defense was not playing well around the time that we played Seattle last year. So you kind of again between Seattle and Carolina, you get 2 rematches that you had last year, uh, where again your team didn't play well defensively, and I think that's going to be the real thing that I'm going to be keeping an eye on when looking at how this team starts because that's the biggest thing that Dan Campbell's going to have to be able to prove um, going into this year. We've had 2 years in a row. Obviously, the first year that he was coaching, the team wasn't very good, so there wasn't like a huge expectation for them to to have a great season. But again, losing all of the games that they lost so early in the season, and then you go back to last year, you win against Washington, but then you just go on this losing streak. You kind of start like eyes kind of start to go towards Dan Campbell, and it's like, when are you going to start putting together a winning season, or at least a winning streak early in the season, so that your team can have momentum to carry them throughout the season. Shout out to Detroit Fan TV who says, looks like 12-5 to me. 12-5, like that's again, I think that's what you're gonna need to be able to win the division in the first place. I was talking to somebody earlier today because the idea is that the division should be the Lions to run away with. And I think that's a thought process that a lot of us have is again, Green Bay doesn't have Aaron Rodgers, the Bears uh, are rebuilding, and then Minnesota lost a lot of pieces defensively. And so it's this idea that like, well, then yeah, they should be able to cakewalk to a division win. But in my mind, like Minnesota wasn't that great last year. When I remember looking at them as a team, I didn't think they were that imposing. Obviously, yes, they have Justin Jefferson, and obviously they have Dalvin Cook, but I don't think to me, I didn't feel like Dalvin Cook was playing that great last year. Obviously, they got TJ Hawkinson from us, and Kirk Cousins is like our Jared Goff. And depending on how you feel about Kirk Cousins, you probably think he's worse than Jared Goff. But anyways, they didn't seem all that imposing to me last year, and they still found a way to win 13 games. So Minnesota is the team for me where like I'm going to be keeping an eye on because that's a team that just finds way to win. They find ways to win games, and it's never really pretty. It's always kind of just, they just play close enough to be able to ink out wins against, you know, certain teams here and there. So um Jacob Brunley says, I really hope they don't go 0 and 2. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I think if they go 0 and 2, again, Atlanta becomes the game where you're like, hey, we got to bounce back, right? Atlanta becomes the game where you think they can be able to bounce back uh and get a win in the win column, and then you have another game against Green Bay where again, Green Bay, Carolina, you can start kind of stringing some wins together. Um the one thing that I think is also pretty evident, um also uh, appreciated Jacob on thanks for the great content. Obviously, again, that's all I'm hoping to do for you guys is have good conversation, provide good content. And yeah, just have a good time ah, in all that. Um, but that was what I was saying was when looking at the schedule, one thing that is also evident is I think last year the Lions had a few more like back-to-back home games. They get that early in the season where you have Seattle and Atlanta back to back. You go away to Green Bay, come home to Carolina, and then you're on the road for 2 games straight with Tampa and Baltimore. And then you look at the back end of the schedule, and it's kind of a little bit of the same where again you have back-to-back road games against the Saints in Chicago, and then back-to-back away games with Minnesota and Dallas. And Dallas is probably another one where I don't know what it is, but I just feel like the Lions never play well in Dallas. Um, and I don't necessarily understand what that is. Like last year, I don't think again, Dallas wasn't that great either, but this team just wasn't playing at the same way at the same clip that they were playing once they went on that, 8 out of 10 streak. So Dallas is another one that I think is going to be kind of close. But when I look at the schedule, if we're just being trying not to be like overly optimistic. So Kansas City, Kansas City, I think is an L. I think the Lions play them really close, but I think Kansas City ends up being an L. Just again, probably a little too much Patrick Mahomes at the end, and I think that becomes the deciding factor in this game. Is more so Patrick Mahomes. I'm not overly concerned about Kansas City's defense, but if we're talking about do I think Jared Goff can go shot for shot with Patrick Mahomes, that's where I kind of get hung up. I don't think he necessarily can. So starting off the bat, I got them going 0 and 1. I think they bounce back, and I think they play much better against Seattle this time around. You have an improved secondary where I think Aaron Glenn's going to be able to do the types of things that he wants to do in the secondary to be able to contest and contend with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, um, Geno Smith, and just make things a little more difficult. And I think because we saw Geno be more mobile last year, I don't think it's going to catch people off guard the same way I think it did last year. So I got the Lions at 1 and 1. Oh, real quick, shout out Super Saiyan Lion saying got 12 and 5 calling it right now with this schedule. Like I said, yeah, I'm going through it right now. I'm gonna try and see. I feel like I'm gonna probably be somewhere around there, be somewhere between 12 and 11. Um, I don't know. The tough thing about predicting schedules is like you may have to give a loss somewhere where you probably don't really feel like it's a loss, but you're gonna have to give it just because we can't have this team going undefeated. That's not realistic. Um, and I think you're talking about in regards to do I think Jared Goff can go? So this is my thing, right? And this is why like, I'm happy that the Lions are playing the Chiefs with Jared Goff because that's all I've ever heard whenever it comes to criticizing Jared Goff is like, well, he's done it before. And it's like, you realize like that was 5 years ago. Like it's both guys have improved since then. And since then, like Patrick Mahomes has won 2 Super Bowls. Since then, Patrick Mahomes has just gotten better, and I don't think Jared Goff has gotten drastically better since that matchup that they've had all those years ago. I get that it was, one of the highest rated Monday night games and probably one of the greatest Monday night games that we can all probably remember. But again, things are different. These players have, well, at least I think one of them has drastically improved, and the other one, that's where I have to kind of see it. Like I definitely have to see, can Jared really go shot for shot with this version of Patrick Mahomes? Um, and I'm just not sure that he can, in all honesty. I've seen, or I think not just we have seen Patrick Mahomes pull, I don't even want to say rabbits out of his hat at this point. He is pulling like doggone near unicorns out of his hat when it comes to making plays and turning nothing into something. And if the Lions can continue to keep Jared healthy and keep him protected and keep him in a rhythm, sure, he can make things happen. But I think very similar to what we saw last year with the Seattle game, where it's like one mistake also dooms them, right? They were right there with Seattle shot for shot, going up and down the field. The score was very close. But the one thing that really kind of decided that game, outside of, again, the defense playing terrible, Jared did throw a pick six in that game. So it's like, I'm not saying that Jared's going to get drastically played, but it's, again, the idea that he has to go tit for tat, uh, with Patrick Mahomes for an entire game. And right now, today, I don't know if I want to bet my money on that. Considering the fact no JMO, and again, so you're kind of like missing an element of your offense to even make it more explosive and make it more unpredictable. So kind of got to see from that standpoint. You say yeah, but Mahomes in both Super Bowls has been just okay, not great. Look at his numbers, and that's fine in the Super Bowl. But we're like, what has he done in the regular season? He's been out of this world in the regular season, and so again, I'm not saying that like it's a blowout. I think that's the other thing too. Like a lot of people that are concerned about this game are treating it as if like, well, the Lions are going to go out here and get embarrassed. I don't think they go out here and get embarrassed. I really don't. But I do think if we're talking about what tips the scales in the Chiefs' favor, I think it's the ability. I think it's Patrick Mahomes' ability to literally take over a game, and us as Lions fans having to hope that Jared Goff doesn't make a mistake that costs this team a game. Um, that's where I kind of think like the divide is between the two. Josie says this season is going to be a real test for Goff. Our toughest games are going to be on the road where Goff usually doesn't show up. That's also the case. I forgot all about that. Thanks for pointing that out, Joel, because not only is this on the road, this is also outdoors. And I get that it's not like cold outdoors, but Jared doesn't play well outdoors. Now, I know when they played Kansas City, and I know Super Saint Lions, you're probably going to say they played Kansas City. He played really well. But I think that's always something that we have to keep in mind, or at least I have to always keep in mind, is that Jared's a different quarterback outdoors versus indoors. And it's a narrative that I wish would go away, but he keeps giving more and more credence to that narrative when you can drastically see how differently he plays and how drastically different his numbers are when he's indoors versus outdoors. Um, and I agree. If the Lions are going to pull out a victory, it has to be on the shoulders of the defense. The defense is going to have to come up in a really big way. And I think there are some things that the Lions can do, obviously, with an improved secondary. Obviously, it's new faces, and obviously they're going to have to build that chemistry. But I think there's more things that the Lions can do this year with this secondary than they could a year ago with the secondary they have. And I think with the trust that they've built, the trust that they'll be able to build with that secondary. Um, Obviously, you're going to have to contend with Travis Kelce, and Travis Kelce is just a monster. I think the best you can do is hope that you limit the impact that he actually has on a game. Um, all right, let me get back to this schedule breakdown. So obviously, like I said, I got 0-1, or yeah, 0-1 against the Chiefs. I got them winning against the Seattle, so that's 1-1. I think they beat Atlanta. I just don't think Desmond Ritter is going to necessarily be ready to live up to the hype, which means that you're going to lean a lot on Bijan, and that's a lot for a rookie running back. I think the Lions can do just enough to limit him again as a rookie, and then again it's at home, and this offense was explosive at home. That's when we saw the best versions of Jared Goff. That's when we just saw the best versions of this offense altogether. So right there, 2-1. Green Bay Green Bay wasn't impressive with Aaron Rodgers. I don't expect them to be drastically impressive with Jordan Love. Not out the gate. Maybe I think it takes probably a couple more weeks for him to maybe find a rhythm, and really become a threat. So right there, I got them at 3-1. Carolina. So Carolina's at home. Again, I think one of the benefits that Carolina had when playing the Lions last year was that they were outdoors, and Jared actually played pretty well. But obviously, we heard a lot about the conditions of the field. It was cold. Guys were saying things like, the turf almost felt like cement. So I think you have a chance right there with having Carolina at home. Your players will feel more comfortable. You'll be able to execute and utilize the speed of that offense, um, and really take advantage of Carolina. So Carolina is one that I will give to the Lions as well. So at that point in time, you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're 4-1 going into the Bucks. I feel like the Lions are going to lose a game that they're not supposed to. Right? It's going to be a game like this one where like we're going to be like, no, like they should easily walk in, take care of the Bucks, and for some reason or another, like it just doesn't happen. The Bucks have nothing going for them that makes me feel like this should be a problem. But again, like teams lose games that they just shouldn't. And I guess if I had to pick one, it might be this one. It might be one of those situations very similar to when Baker Mayfield came in with the Rams. I think they were playing the Raiders, and he made just enough plays, and the Rams just weren't all that efficient. Um, so I'm gonna chalk up Buccaneers as a loss. So I'm gonna have them at 4-2 going into the Ravens at the Ravens. I think they drop that game to the Ravens as well. I just think the Ravens are just going to be a little too much with Lamar not having to do everything now. Like he has actual outside weapons. He actually has receivers that he can rely on. He'll have a new offensive coordinator. So I just think things will be um I think we're gonna see a new offensive like attack and a different mentality from the Ravens. So Lions lose two in a row. They fall to 4-3. Um, but I think they'll get it back on track going into the Raiders on Monday night. Again, all eyes on them. And I think they embarrassed the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are very good. I don't think they're very well coached either. So I think right there you have the opportunity to pick up a win before you head into the bye. And going into the bye, you're 5-3. Um, Super Saiyan Lions saying Lions have a great chance to be 7-1 by the bye week. I think they have a chance, sure. I think 6-2 is probably more likely. And then again, if I'm being negative, if I'm being pessimistic, uh, you're talking about them going into the bye at 5-3. Um, and again, it's just dropping one of those games that they probably shouldn't. And I'm giving it to Tampa, but I guess again, it could easily be Seattle, it could easily be Carolina again. It really just kind of depends on how this team is really playing and how they're really, you know, uh what the chemistry is like. Again, more so on the defensive side because that's the side that's gone through a whole lot of changes. Um, so yeah, I got them at 5-3, heading into the bye. Um, Super Saiyan Lion says positivity, Miko. This is the year Lions scare teams. I believe it. Again, I don't know if it's necessarily scare them, but you're going to get their attention. I don't think there's going to be this idea that you'll be able to catch any of these teams off guard. I think you're going to get everybody's best shot. I don't think I think the days, or at least as of right now, right? Unless they start out like 0-3 or something, but like I think the days of people just looking at the Lions and being like, "Oh, that's an easy dub." I think those days are gone. I think you look at what they did last year, and I think they turned a lot of heads, and I think they got a lot of people's attention. Um, from just the way that they were able to fight and finish the season out and be able to beat Green Bay when a lot of people assumed that, again, Green Bay was probably going to the playoffs in that situation. Real quick, shout out Big T saying, "What up, Delmico?" and One Pride. Big T, let me know what you think. Let me know what your record prediction is for the Lions this year. I've seen a couple people have already have said 12-5. I'm already at 5-3 going into the bye. Um, so then you got the Lions coming out of the bye, like I said, going west to LA. LA concerns me, but I think I will give the Lions that one. I think because again, going into the bye with a win, I think we'll have Dan Campbell. I think Dan's just going to be able to make the proper adjustments um, that may have happened that again caused them to lose two straight if they lost to the Bucks and if they lost to the Ravens. Um, I just think they were able to make the proper adjustments to be able to take a win um, from the Chargers. Then you go into the Bears at home. Um, Again, I think that's a dub. So now we are sitting at 7-3. Green Bay at home. I'm gonna get that as a dub as well. So now you're sitting at 8-3. Um, at Saints, I think is an L. Um, I think the Saints are going to be much better than they were a year ago. I think Derek Carr is just going to be a more consistent, more reliable quarterback, and I think that team morale is just going to be better in general. So yeah, I got them dropping that. So that puts them at crap. What did I say? I think I had them at 7-3. So yeah, so 7-4. Um Chicago at Chicago. So I'm gonna have I'm gonna have them losing a game to the Bears because I do think the Bears are gonna be better. I think Justin Fields is still a problem that the Lions are gonna have to figure out. He single-handedly was like in that first game at Chicago, Justin Fields was like basically the only reason that Chicago was being successful. And I think he still has that ability, and I think they're going to be even better with the addition of DJ Moore. And I don't know, who knows what the hell that that defense is going to look like. But again, you're talking about again an outdoor game early in December. I don't think Jared's going to play well in that game, so I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped the game um, to Chicago. Going so then you have Denver at home. Denver's gonna have to prove it to me. They were so bad a year ago that I don't have a reason to be concerned about Denver right now. Um, and I think like with all the rumors that were in the offseason that they were looking to move pieces, like I don't think that that organization is in a really good place. I think Sean Payton's going to help in some areas, but I think him and Russell Wilson are actually really going to butt heads. Um, because if things aren't going well, I just don't think that team is going to be in a good place mentally. Um, Going into the season and kind of progressing through it. Um, Motor City Thanos says, I think 10-7 is our floor and 12-5 is our ceiling. I mean, again, 12-5 is a lot, is what I've heard a lot of people say. 10-7 is a very optimistic floor. Um, but again, like I think in order for the Lions to get to double digit wins, it for me, it relies heavily on how they start the season. If they can start the season well, and again, not have these long losing streaks within, you know, their first 5, 6 games, I think they have a chance. They have a much easier chance of hitting that double digit mark. Um, that's Super Saiyan Lion saying that chick from NFL Network that does the percentages has the Lions taking and maybe sweeping the North. Again, I think it's possible. I don't think there's anything that I've seen in the division that has me overly concerned that the Lions couldn't sweep the division. But again, if there's a team, there are teams that make me concerned. It is the Bears and the Vikings, just because the Bears to me still have the most explosive and most dynamic quarterback uh, in our division, and then the Vikings. The Vikings are just like I don't know, they suck, man, but like they suck at being like that annoying team. They have arguably one of the best wide receivers um in the NFL, and they just find ways of winning games where you're just like, but they're not that good. And yet they find there'll be certain Sundays where they just look like this team that should be uh Super Bowl bound, but again, we've seen it time and time again where Minnesota gets into the playoffs and they kind of fall apart. Ah, chicken. I mean that chick. I don't know what. Yeah. I thought you were actually making fun of somebody. I was really trying to think like who on NFL Network looks like a chicken. Oh, but yeah. So I got them beating Denver at home. I think they drop a game to Minnesota in Minnesota. I think they can Dallas is a tough one. Because again, I don't think we played Dallas well. Like I think the last few years that we've played Dallas, we just have not played them well. And so I have a hard time like saying with like supreme confidence, like, oh yeah, we'll beat Dallas. Um, so yeah, I might have to put that down as an L as well. And then I think we finished the season strong with a win. So let me go back and go through this because I kind of like lost count. So I got one, two, three, four, five. I have six. No, I think I had yeah, I think I had six losses. So 11-6. Um Again, 11-6 is an improvement. I think that's enough to get you into the playoffs. I think that's enough to win the division. Um so yeah, I think I'm one game shy of some of you that are saying 12-5. I'm one game shy of that. Josie saying dream scenario Lions go 3-5 into the bye. Golf plays like cheeks, then Hendon steps in and raises us from the dead. We end up 12-5. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that would first of all, I think that's the only way you see Hendon Hooker, right? Is because I think he'll be healthy enough to play, but I don't think they have any intention of thrusting him into a starting role unless it's like a break glass and type like that type of situation where they're just like, yo, the season is not going the way we want. Um, and Jared's not responding. And just to like back up a second, like if we're talking about the Lions having so in the same way we're saying like, hey, the Lions need their defense to play well, um, for them to reach this like 12-5 or again, let's just say double digit wins in general. Defense has to play well. Um, I think if for some reason they are losing games, I do believe it will probably be more so on the offensive side because I don't think the defense is going to be nearly as bad as they were a year ago. You've made so many investments and your pass rush was finally like getting there and that was getting figured out. Um, I think the guys that you have on the back end are just again drastically better than what you had a year ago. And so when I look at things, it's like the thing that like that's going to be hard to replicate in my mind is the offensive success that you had a year ago. Again, people have tape on Ben Johnson, and if Ben Johnson is able to come out here and still put together like a top five offense, first of all, enjoy it because he's probably gone after this year. Because whatever coaching jobs he was getting the year before are probably only going to be better. But once teams tend to get tape on new offensive coordinators, like then you're able to scheme up things. Then you're able to kind of have a better idea of tendencies and things of that nature. Um, Again, the Lions do have a few new pieces, so that'll probably allow them to have a few more wrinkles. Um, but I don't know. I'll have to see. If I had to be a betting man, like I still tend to feel like they'll be closer to that 11, 12 win, 11 to 12 win mark in my mind. Luke says, Miko, I have a question. Is this schedule easier or harder than the 2022 schedule? At first glance, so this is the thing, right? The 2022 schedule looked extremely easy at first glance, extremely easy. Um, and because a lot of the teams that you were playing were teams that had just drafted like in the same range that you had. I think we played Jacksonville, we had the Giants on our schedule, we had the Jets on our schedule. We had a lot of teams that had drafted in the top 10. And so I remember going into last year being like, "Oh, this is a cakewalk. Like they should be able to get some easy dubs, you know, in the season. This should be easy to get 10, 10 wins." And I think the thing that sunk us was again, one, the defense being poor, but like you had such a terrible start. It was fine. Like, okay, you played the Eagles tough and you lost. Fine. That no harm, no foul, especially seeing where the Eagles ended up being. You beat Washington. Okay, cool. Then I think you went into Minnesota last year, played Minnesota tough, but lost by like 3 or something like that. Um, and then it was just like consistently like these losses. I think obviously the most embarrassing loss that we suffered was at the hands of New England. Um, but do I think the schedule is easier? I don't know if it's easier or if it's just that I have more confidence in the Lions this year. I don't know if that's like a cop out answer, Luke, but like that's kind of how I feel, where it's like this schedule probably isn't easier. This one doesn't look nearly as easy as the 22 schedule does. Cause like I said, that schedule had a lot of teams that had just drafted in the top 10. Um, but I am more confident in this team's ability to rise to the occasion and to actually, um, push a lot of these teams and be the better team in some of these situations. Super Saiyan Lion says, "You think this schedule looks easier?" Like I said, I can see that. I think if we went through it, so I think one of the things that some people also look at when looking at schedules or looking at teams is like, okay, how many top tier quarterbacks are you actually playing this year? Right. And if we were to just look at the schedule in that context, how many top tier, like really problematic quarterbacks are you playing this year? The answer is probably three, right? Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Justin Herbert are like the only quarterbacks that should really scare you on this on the Lions schedule. Um, and then everything else, like you should feel like your quarterback is comparable. Like I said, Justin Fields is more explosive, but I think again, he's still gonna have to show that he's truly developed as a passer. So again, if we were like playing spades, I'd be like three and a possible because Justin Fields would be the possible for me. Um, so so yeah, Luke, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I think last year's schedule was easier, but I think this year's schedule, like I just have a little more faith um that the Lions will have a better team and will be able to compete um at a higher level, going into this year. But yeah, so I don't know, guys. Like I said, I expected this. I planned on this being a pretty quick stream. I wasn't trying to be on here super long. Um, like I said, we'll get more into the schedule as we get closer to the season. Once we go through training camp, once we go through the preseason, once we know, like again, what the Lions roster looks like. Once we know, um, kind of what the rest of the league looks like. Who gets cut? Who gets? Are there any more signings that the Lions do? Um, does anybody get moved? There's a lot of those things as well that are really going to impact um the season. My prediction may even change probably like before week 1. But right now I'm going to stick with 11 and 6. Um I'm going to stick with 11 and 6. We'll talk about it some more. Uh Luke says that he's going to go live tomorrow to talk about the schedule, so obviously keep an eye out for that. Luke, I'll probably pop over. I'll be in your chat chopping it up with people just to kind of see what you're thinking and how you're viewing the schedule. I know you said that you needed time to be able to digest it and kind of analyze it from a different angle. But again, nothing on here worries me. I'm super excited about the 5 primetime games. I think the Lions have a lot of opportunities um, to again put the league on notice and to validate all of the hype, all of the positive thoughts that people have had about this team. Um, and I think another thing, just like I'll say this as we kind of close out, going back to the Kansas City game, because I know that's the game that so many people are concerned about. Um, just because you lose that game doesn't mean that again it dashes any hope or any it shouldn't like ruin your thought process that like, hey, maybe this team can actually compete and get to the playoffs. Um, to me, Kansas City is the perfect measuring stick for this team. Has this team gotten better? Can they continue to be disciplined? Um, can Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, and Aaron Glenn scheme up a game plan to again figure out a team that has for like the last few years has always been in the Super Bowl conversation? Maybe not getting to the Super Bowl, but there hasn't been a year yet where the Kansas City Chiefs haven't at least been favored to make it. So that's kind of where I'll leave things for today's stream. Um, again, let me know what you guys think. Again, just obviously I'll be ending the stream, but you guys can still leave comments in the chat. I'll chop it up with you guys there. But yeah, Appreciate you guys coming through. Be sure to hit that like button on your way out if you haven't already. And I will catch you guys next week. I'll probably stream again on Monday. So I will catch you guys then. And yeah, y'all take it easy.